Welcome to the Anti-Average Podcast. This podcast is for those who want to stick it to the status quo. My name is Justin Carrico, and listen, I am honored that you would take some time today to be with me. My goal is to give you the inspiration and the information so that you can take your next step forward. In other words, I want to provoke you towards your potential. We're in the middle of a two-part series that I'm calling Simple Growth. I'm giving you 6 strategies that prevent settling. We've covered the first 3 in the last podcast, so if you haven't listened or watched on YouTube, then make sure you pause this one, go check that one out. It really lays the foundation for the next 3 that we're going to look at today. So just kind of a refresher, if you did listen, first off, let me say thanks, and make sure you subscribe. Make sure that you are able to get this content updated constantly so that you stay up to date on what's happening. But here's a refresher from the first one, the first 3 strategies of this simple growth. Strategy number 1 was be intentional. Growth doesn't just happen. The only thing that grows in our life accidentally are weeds, and nobody wants those in their life. So be intentional. We've got to be intentional with the way that we're growing. We can't just go through life and let things happen accidentally. Strategy number 2 was be aware. You have to know yourself to grow yourself. You have to know your strengths. You have to know your weaknesses. This is where I mentioned that you need to stop trying to be well-rounded. I actually think that's the worst advice you can give someone, because at best, you're only going to hit mediocre in your weaknesses. But if you focus on your strengths, then you can excel and you can reach a higher capacity to lead and to help other people. Now, in saying that, you have to be able to manage your weaknesses so that they don't become obstacles to your excellence. And that's what we talked about with strategy number 2, which was be aware. Strategy number 3 was be reflective. You have to slow down so that growth can catch up. We need to pause and grow instead of just finishing something and going on to the next thing. So those were 3 strategies that we talked about in the first podcast. Now let's dive into today's content. We're going to get the next 3 of this 6 strategy prevention system that will stop you from being stagnant or stale in your life. Strategy number 4 is be consistent. Man, sometimes that's a hard one to do, but be consistent. Discipline is the difference maker. In Darren Hardy's book, it's called The Compound Effect. He gives this great example of this compounding penny. If you haven't read The Compound Effect, it'll be in the show notes. You can click on there. You can access that. But this compounding penny, he gives this incredible example where if you were given the choice between taking $3 million in cash right now or a single penny that doubles in value every day, but only for 31 days, which would you choose? And when you go through how he's got it listed out, day 5, day 10, day 20, and he goes through 31. On day 5, you would have 16 cents if you chose the penny that doubled. So you're comparing that 16 cents to the 3 million that you could have had in cash right now, and you're thinking, hey, this was a bad deal, right? I shouldn't have done this one. On day 10, if you took the double penny, you would then have $5.12. On day 20, only 11 days left, you would have $5,243. It still looks like it's a bad deal, that you should have taken the $3 million in cash up front. But this is where you see that consistency pays off. On day 29, if you would have chosen the penny, on day 29, you have $2.7 million. Still short of the 3, but there's still 2 days left. On day 30, you would have 5.3 million, and on day 31, you would have $10,737,418.24 if you would have chosen the penny that is consistently doubled over every day. You would have blown the $3 million out of the water. I love what Craig Groeschel says. He says, it's the small things done consistently over time that lead to the big results that everyone wants. Just think about the previous 3 strategies that we looked at, right? If you were going to be consistent just in those first 3, so you're not going to let hope be a strategy anymore. You're going to be intentional about your growth, and you're going to be consistently intentional about your growth. If you're not going to just jump at every opportunity, instead, you're going to be aware, right? Consistently aware of your struggles and your strengths, and you're going to focus on growing in your strengths so that you know you can add value most to others. Or you're not going to run from event to event or from day to day. You're going to be consistently reflective. You're going to pause, maximizing that growth over time. You're going to consistently do that. How different would your life look? Would it feel? Would it be if you were consistent even in those 3 strategies? I can promise you'll grow. I can promise more joy because you'll be working in your strengths. I can promise your relationships will be stronger because you're reflecting on your actions and your words. I can promise your culture at work will become one of the most encouraging cultures that there are because you're thinking about people and achievements that you can celebrate. Listen, consistency is the compounding interest of growth. Consistency is the compounding interest of growth. Now, when we're talking about being consistent, maybe you feel overwhelmed. Maybe you already feel beat down. Maybe you already feel like, man, I'm defeated. I can't be consistent about anything. I'm like doing this yo-yo diet all the time. I'm trying to do all these things financially. I'm trying to whatever it is. And you already feel defeated. So let me encourage you with this. Start small. I hate exercise. And a little over a year ago, about 2 years ago now, I decided I was going to do 10 push-ups a day. You may laugh and be like, well, that is not going to get you anywhere. Really? That's not really a solid workout, but I hate working out. I hated getting up. I hated going somewhere to work out. I hated someone telling me how to work out. I just hated working out. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to commit to do 10 push-ups every day. I feel like that's doable. I can do 10 push-ups. I feel like it's doable. I wouldn't hate it, or at least I would feel like I could commit to it consistently. And so I tried to link it with a daily habit. So what I would do is before I would brush my teeth, I had to do 10 push-ups. Now you may laugh and say, yeah, but what kind of impact is 10 push-ups really in a day? It's not that big of a deal. That's actually 3,650 push-ups over the course of a year. I want you to think about how many push-ups you did last year, or how many sit-ups you did last year. But with just 10 a day, with consistency, you could have killed it with 3,650 push-ups or 3,650 sit-ups. It's the small things done consistently over time that lead to the big results that everybody wants. You see somebody else winning. You see somebody else doing the things that you want to do or having the things that you want to have, whatever it is. What you don't see is what they did behind closed doors or in the dark or when nobody was watching, that they were consistently putting in the effort, the time, the work, whatever it may be. Even on the mundane things, they were consistently doing it. It's the small things done consistently over time that lead to the big results that everyone wants. Consistency is the compounding interest of growth. Listen, you will never change your life until you change something that you do daily. Habits are powerful, and consistency is the key. Strategy number 4 is be consistent. Now, leading into strategy number 5, I want you to think about a rubber band. I think this right here helps us maybe process through this particular strategy. So think about a rubber band, and in your mind or out loud, if nobody's going to think you're weird or strange right now, I want you to start naming things that you can use a rubber band for. Like name different ways that you can use it. Maybe it's to hold papers together, or it's to hold something together, whatever it is. Maybe it's to put your hair up if you had hair, whatever it is. So you're using this rubber band, and I want you to think about this. All the ways that you name that a rubber band is useful, the rubber band is only useful when it is stretched. That's true for us as well. We're only useful when we are stretched. And strategy number 5 is this. In order to help prevent you from settling, strategy number 5 is be stretched. Growth stops when you lose the tension between where you are and where you could be. Say that again. Be stretched, because growth stops when you lose the tension between where you are and where you really could be. One of John Maxwell's favorite sayings, he says, God's gift to us is potential. Our gift back to God is developing it. Very few people want to be stretched. Now, hear me say this. When we're talking about being stretched, I'm not talking about being stretched too thin. I'm not talking about being stretched where you're just way out of balance or your life is in chaos. I'm not talking about being stretched like that. I'm talking about being stretched from your comfort zone, or with your influence, or with being willing to grow in skills and abilities that you already have, but pushing them outside of your comfort zone. The only way to know what's possible is to push yourself. How do you know what you really could achieve in this life if you aren't stretching yourself? If you stay where you're just comfortable, then I would dare say this. If you stay where you're comfortable, you're probably staying where you're actually not the most useful. Remember, rubber bands are most useful when they are stretched. I also want to add this. If you plan on being anything less than you're capable of being, you will probably be unhappy all the days of your life. Just think about that for a moment. If you plan on being anything less than really what you're capable of being, you're really setting yourself up, and you'll probably be unhappy all the days of your life. Instead of wishing or wanting or waiting or searching inside of yourself for a reason to start, I want to encourage you, stretch yourself. I'll give you an example. 42% of college graduates never read a book after they graduate college. 42% of college graduates never read a book after they graduate college. Too many people are willing to settle for average in life. They feel like they worked in this certain period of time, whether it be 4 years or 6 years or 7 years, whatever it is, to get them through college. They read the books, they put in the time, they put in the effort and the work, and now they're settling into that life that it is creating, instead of making sure that they stretch themselves and really see what they're capable of. What if you did read one more book? What if you committed that this year you're going to stretch yourself and you're going to try to read 6 books? You're going to read one book every 2 months, or one book a month, depending on how fast of a reader you are. The way to increase your capacity to lead, the way to increase your impact, is to be stretched. And I'm going to add this, not only for your own growth, but for the sake of others. I have these core values in my life. There's 4 core values in my life. I'm not going to dig into them now. Maybe that's a different podcast for a different day. And maybe I'll just have to confess up front. I get it. I'm weird. I'm strange. But really what I'm saying is I'm intentional with my life. And I have 4 core values in my life. And one of them is disciplined development. And I have like a little phrase underneath it, under my discipline development. And my phrase is, because being stale makes me stink. And what I mean by that is that if I'm not stretching myself, if I'm not consistently growing, right? I want to attach those together. If I'm not consistently growing and stretching myself, learning new things, reading and diving into new ideas or exploring new avenues, whatever it is, if I'm not consistently stretching myself, then I have nothing to offer others. And I'm stagnant and I'm stale. And last time I checked, anything stale stinks. So I don't want to do that. I always want to be pushing myself, to stretch myself, to really see what I'm capable of. Strategy number 5 is be stretched. And you do this for strategy number 6, which leads me to the last simple growth strategy. Strategy 6, be for others. Listen, growing yourself enables you to grow others. Most people who grow and they push themselves do it to add value just to themselves. I want to encourage you, add value to others. When you make a choice to grow, you are expanding your capacity. You're expanding your potential to grow someone else, right? The more things that I learn as time progresses, as I continue to grow, as I continue to read, as I continue to have experience in my life, as I continue to stretch and hopefully continue to grow into the potential that God has given me, then what I really have is the opportunity to invest in someone else, to teach someone else, to show someone else, which ultimately adds value to them. Not only do you get better, not only do you grow, but the whole organization, school system, team, culture, whatever it is, they all get better. And you get to leave a legacy in someone else's life. So I'm going to encourage you, not only are you being intentional and not only are you walking through these 6 strategies that prevent settling, but ultimately that you're doing this to be for others. That as you're growing, you're not selfish with it. As you're growing, you're not holding on to it, but instead you're sharing it with others. You're showing them, you're walking them through this stuff. You're investing in them. You know, a great way to do that, if you have found this particular podcast helpful or part 1 and part 2 helpful, share it with someone. Right? Maybe they're walking through and they don't realize they're not being intentional with their lives, or they need to know that consistency could actually pay off in their life. If you would just commit to doing something small, maybe that would be that one step that they need. So I want to encourage you, share this with someone. As we talk about these 6 strategies, I want to just walk through them one more time as we wrap up this particular podcast for today. Strategy number 1, be intentional. Growth doesn't just happen. The only thing that grows in our life accidentally are weeds. Strategy number 2 is be aware. You have to know yourself to grow yourself. Stop trying to be well-rounded. Instead, manage your weaknesses so they don't become obstacles to your excellence, and step into your strengths. Allow your strengths to grow and reach that full capacity that you are able to be. Strategy number 3, be reflective. Slow down. Let growth catch up. We need to pause and grow instead of just finishing something, finishing a task and going on to the next thing. In the last podcast, I told you to take 5 minutes at the end of your day and set like a little appointment for yourself so that you can reflect on the things that happened that day, so that you can learn from the experiences, so that you can learn from the conversations or the moments that happen. You have to slow down and be reflective so that growth can catch up. Strategy number 4 is be consistent. Discipline is the difference maker. I know you hate that word. It's okay. Discipline is the difference maker. And remember that penny example when you're thinking through that particular strategy. Strategy number 5 is be stretched. Growth stops when you lose the tension between where you are and where you could be. If you plan on being anything less than you're capable of being, I can promise you're probably going to be unhappy all the days of your life, which this leads to strategy number 6, which is be for others. Growing yourself enables you to grow others. When you get better, when you grow, you have the ability or even the capability to then invest in and grow someone else. If you want to be anti-average, if you really want to stick it to the status quo, don't make this life all about yourself. Instead, make it about you growing so that you can better someone else's life and leave a legacy better than you ever imagined. Thanks for tuning in today. Hope you will join us on the first and third Thursday of every single month. I'm honored that you would take the time to watch or to listen to this podcast, and hopefully I will see you next time.